Powerful engines roar like thunder, sleek machines blur by in a flash of colour, and the scent of burning rubber fills the air. The racers, modern-day gladiators, navigate hairpin turns and battle for every inch of the track, their reflexes and precisions pushed to the limit. Each race, a high-stakes chess game at breakneck speed, where strategy and split-second decision can make or break a victory. Pit crews dance around cars in synchronised chaos, changing tyres and fueling up in mere seconds. From the prestigious circuits of Formula One to the gritty dirt tracks of rally racing, motorsport is a spectacle of human and machine working in perfect harmony, a celebration of engineering marvels and the spirit of competition. That's when it goes right. And like everything, accidents do occur. And the outcome can be tragic. The risks are high, but that's also what makes it exciting. Thanks for joining us this episode as we look at motorsport's darkest day, the 1955 Le Mans disaster.
I love that you basically described a death sport. You're like, yeah, it's pretty dangerous. That's why we love it.
That's why we love it.
Which is true.
Yeah, well, that's why I said it. It's true. Why do you like watching Formula One?
I like it because of the racing, definitely not because of the crashes.
Is that sarcasm? I'm not sure.
That's a bit of both.
But that's what makes it exciting, isn't it? It's thrilling, it's fast.
It's people pushing things to the absolute limit, which is always fun to watch.
Well, welcome to this episode of Cheeky Tales, episode 80 by my calculation.
It is episode 80. We were away last fortnight.
And I was away the fortnight before.
Yep.
So it feels like it's
you
been a while.
haven't done one for over a month.
No.
I have not done one for 4 weeks. Like we're back. We're back.
A bit to catch up on. You've been out west.
I've been everywhere, man. I went to Alpha.
Okay. Where's Alpha?
Alpha is 2 hours west of Emerald, which is 2 hours west of Rocky, which is 8 hours north of here. It was a long way.
Yeah. Right.
I drove for 12 hours to get to Emerald. And then
it was another 2 hours from there.
Yeah. We stayed in Emerald overnight on the first night, drove out to Alpha the second day for the setup. We ended up spending way longer there than we thought we would because, you got to get power at these sites and some of them had to be generators and whatnot. And then, we drove out, stayed in Alpha the night of the races because we were there till midnight. Country races go hard.
Yeah.
It was so much fun.
And we are talking about races this episode, but you're talking about horse races.
I'm talking about horsey boys, yeah.
Equine races.
Oh, hey, buddy.
What's up?
Butt to the camera. Yeah.
And I've been to Cairns. You called me while I was in Cairns.
I did, yeah.
I was up there for school sports for my daughter.
Yeah.
So hockey.
That was a lot of fun for you, I'm sure.
It was a good couple of days, yeah. Long days. Sitting in the sun watching hockey, but it was good.
Yep. And a lot of hockey that's not your kid too.
No.
So very dull hockey.
Look, it was the first time I'd been to Cairns as well. And it was a bit of an eye-opener. Cairns is a lot more touristy than I thought it would be.
Well, yeah, that's all they have up there.
Yeah.
That and a rainforest.
Yeah.
And guess who goes to the rainforest? The tourists.
Yeah. And the Great Barrier Reef, that's what they're there for as well.
Yeah. Yeah.
Just at that Cairns airport, you walk out and all the signs have like Chinese and Japanese writing on there as well, which is something I wasn't expecting. And the area I stayed in, it was just all like hotels and motels.
Yeah.
And
that's most of Cairns, dude.
Yeah. Northern Cairns is just that. So that was good. Another spot I can tick off. And if I'd known beforehand, I would have went to the Hog's Breath at Cairns because you mentioned that in the last in the chat. While I was there, I could have just dropped in and grabbed a photo.
I haven't. We haven't formally discussed the idea of doing the Hog's Breath tour of Brisbane. Sean and I mentioned it in the episode that we were recording, but we also haven't made any further planning since then. But we're going to do a Hog's Breath tour of Brisbane.
Yeah, nice.
Do all of them in like a weekend or something. There's like 5 of them.
Yep. What else is new? Because it's been, like I said, it's been a while. I got a new phone, so what's actually your camera this week might look a little bit different on my new Pixel 8 Pro.
Is that a product placement?
Google, you got heaps of money. Come at us.
And they know that you've said it.
They're listening right now.
They sure are. What else is new? Not really anything. I'm still employed. You're still employed. Sean's not here. He's on a family vacation. This guy's licking the hell out of my hand. Is there anything I'm forgetting?
I don't think so.
We're getting a delivery. That's why he's freaking out.
Ah.
Oh, you can open your eye, buddy.
So are we waiting or?
Yeah. That was cruel. All right. Sorry for that brief interlude, everyone.
So, do you want to help with how to say this right? The name of this race? Did I get it right?
Le Mans.
Le Mans.
Le Mans.
Le Mans.
Like lemon, but say it like you're an idiot. Le Mans.
Le Mans.
Le Mans.
Okay. You don't pronounce the S.
No.
Right.
Le Mans.
Le Mans.
I like the Le Mans 24 hour.
The Le Mans 24. We have our own endurance race. Bathurst.
Are you talking about the 1,000 or the 12 hour? Because they are very different events. And both occur in the same place. You got the Bathurst 12 hour, which is GT racing, which is very similar to the lower class of
I would say
Le Mans.
The 1,000.
Yeah.
So when I was looking up a few of these, it's like this race is a part. Well, I'm going to get into the history of this race, but this race is a part of like a grander championship.
The FIA World Endurance Championship.
And there are certain races in each of like the disciplines of motorsport racing that seem to be bigger than the championship they're involved in.
Le Mans Indy 500
is one. Le Mans
the Monaco Grand Prix
is one for the F1. I'd say Bathurst is a bigger race than the V8 Supercar Championship. And Le Mans is another example of this race is bigger than the...
Yeah, no one cares. Like, nobody can name who the FIA World Endurance Championship champions are.
No.
They know who won Le Mans.
Yeah. So, again, like I said, we're going to have a quick look at the history of this race. First, what is it? Short answer, it's a car race.
Mm-hmm.
The long answer...
Brum, brum, but long, long.
The long answer to that question, it's an endurance race that has pushed and still to this day pushes the engineering and technology of cars forward.
When did it first occur?
1923.
That's right. 101 years old. I mean, skip some of the war years, but, you know.
It did, yeah, and I kind of skip over that, but we'll look at that later. So this race is also, I feel like, a little bit different than the standard races we usually watch, like Bathurst, the 1,000, Formula One cars. They're all based on reaching a certain distance.
Yeah.
Yep. The fastest. Whereas the winner of this one it's actually who goes the furthest distance in a period of time, which in this case is 24 hours.
Mm-hmm.
I'm sure there are other races out there that
are 24 hours.
Or have that kind of setup where it's about the furthest distance reached.
Every race in the World Endurance Championship.
But you don't know of them. This is the one, I'm not a huge motorsport fan, but this is the one race that has that for me that I know of. So yeah, like we said, it began in 1923 and was held on the 26th and 27th of May. Originally, it was to be a 3-year event, with the winner being declared by
That's a long race.
Yeah. With the winner being declared by the car who had travelled the furthest over the 3 consecutive 24-hour races in 3 years.
That's a weird setup.
Yeah. That idea was abandoned in 1928, with the winners being awarded at each event. Nowadays, the race is held in mid-June, so that the nights are at their shortest, but this also means very hot conditions for the cars and the drivers.
Very hot. That's French, very hot. It'll be like, sacre bleu, it is 28 degrees.
Well, obviously, if you know your car's, the cooler the air, the better performance. So it's a payoff. You have hotter air typically, but it's also a shorter night. So I guess the more light for a race, the less
danger.
Mm-hmm.
It is bonkers at night at Le Mans.
Just like, pitch black.
Yeah. I'm sure you saw some of the footage. If you haven't seen any footage of Le Mans at night, you should go watch it. Imagine like your car headlights, but you're doing 200 miles an hour down a straight.
We'll get to the speeds in a minute. The race starts at 4 p.m. and ends at 4 p.m. the following day. There were a few exceptions. COVID, for some reason, made it start at 2 o'clock or something like that, and there's a few other ones.
You know, because COVID hates the heat.
Yeah. At the race's inception, drivers would start at the opposite side of the pit lane, with the cars in the pit lane lined up, and at the drop of the French flag, drivers would run across the track and enter their vehicle before racing off. This is known as the
Le Mans start.
Le Mans start.
It's very cool. Very dangerous too, if you think about it.
You mentioned that there was a few years that it didn't happen. World War II was a few years it didn't happen. There was a few other times
World War One.
the race was cancelled. No, it started after World War One.
Oh, yeah, it did, didn't it? In the 20s, yeah.
So that kind of Le Mans start also led to some deaths. We're going to get into a few.
Yeah, this is a morbid topic.
This is a morbid topic. We're talking about motor racing.
Icky warning.
But
Itchy warning.
There's a lot of deaths in this episode. As racers wouldn't harness themselves in properly to save time, because they would try and do that while racing in the first couple of laps, some of those racers would become involved in an accident while not harnessed in. So,
to be fair, in that time, pretty surprising they'd had harnesses to begin with.
Well, that was the thing. It said as well that a lot of the racers at the time didn't believe in harnesses because they thought it was safer for the driver to be ejected from the car during a crash.
It probably was in those days. We've covered Niki Lauda.
Yeah.
That sort of thing happened all the time.
Yeah.
And people would just get trapped in their car and die. Oh, sheesh.
This type of start
heavy.
Also inspired Porsche to locate the ignition key on the left-hand side of the steering wheel, so that, or in a left-hand drive car, so that when they would do the start, the driver would get in, he's able to turn the key with his left hand while putting the car into gear with his right hand.
Bit weird that they had a key to begin with. And why would they not park it in gear?
It saved tenths of seconds. It didn't really save that much time.
Why would it not be parked in gear? Man, I would have made a lot of money as an engineer at Porsche in the 1940s or whatever.
I actually didn't write this down, but there was another invention or what do I call, like, evolution of the thing where someone did a different start where he left the car in gear and would jump in, turn the car on, which would roll it forward.
Oh, you use the starter motor.
While it's rolling forward, then depress the clutch and start it, and he's already moving. So, yeah.
Bring it back, I say.
In 1969...
Nice. You left the pause for that, didn't you?
I have pause for Aaron in brackets.
I'm an adult.
Jackie Ickx opposed this kind of start.
That is ick, not itch.
Ickx, yep. Ickx. I'm assuming that's Ickx.
Yeah, it's Ickx. Jackie Ickx.
Great
name.
He opposed that kind of start, the Le Mans start, citing it was unsafe. Which it kind of was.
Probably.
Yeah. In his protest, he walked across the track, almost getting hit by a car while it was leaving, and took his time to fasten his safety belts before pulling away. Another driver, John Wolfe, died on the first lap.
Oh, jeez.
Possibly due to the rush at the start and not buckling himself in properly.
I know it's very sad. It's more serious, but imagine going through all that effort and then just dying on lap one.
In saying that year, the race was won by Jackie Ickx. So he took his time, walked across the track, took his time to buckle.
I mean, you got 24 hours to make up the extra half minute or whatever that you might lose.
And he ended up winning.
Yeah.
So, that was pretty cool.
That's a pretty baller move.
He protested the thing. He held true and ended up winning the race.
Won the whole thing, yeah.
So let's talk about the track itself. Circuit de la Sarthe.
Good job. That's the first time you've nailed a pronunciation in French.
I mean, we've played enough of it in Forza. I've heard it.
Sure have.
Lots of times.
Circuit de la Sarthe.
Located on the south of the town of Le Mans.
Does it mean circuit to the south?
I don't actually know what the translation is.
South? Because
possibly it's to the south of the town of Le Mans, which itself is southwest of Paris. If you've ever played any racing game ever, you've probably driven on this track. It is a 13.6 kilometre tarmac track consisting of both public roads and dedicated private racing tracks. He's biting you.
Yeah, he is.
It is a 13.6 kilometre tarmac track consisting of both public roads and dedicated private racing tracks. The course consists of 38 corners and pre-1990, the racing world's longest straight, the Mulsanne Straight.
Mulsanne.
Mulsanne Straight.
Mussolini Straight.
Mussolini Straight. He was Italian, wasn't he?
Yes, he was. Yeah, the Mulsanne.
Mulsanne Strait. The Mulsanne Strait is actually part of the national road system of France, making it a public road. It is a 6-kilometre section broken up with 2 chicanes. And it joins the town of Le Mans and Mulsanne. So it's actually like a little section of highway that joins the 2 towns.
Yeah, when you see it on screen in a race, it is very obviously a highway. It's got like the 2 lanes, the shoulders.
And it runs in a north-south direction.
Yeah.
Which, when I was looking this up, actually kind of blew my mind a little bit because every time you see the Circuit de la Sarthe,
it's on the
it's on the top running from left to right.
Yeah.
Actually,
I think that's in the logo for the track.
Yeah.
It's sideways.
Yeah. Actually, on the map,
yeah,
it's that way, which I was like, oh, I've never really seen it that way. Because I was on the map, Google Maps, looking for it. I'm like, where the hell is it? Oh, it's this way.
Yeah.
So, yeah. Part of the reasoning to adding the chicanes was that for half the lap, cars would be at full throttle. So this was a 6-kilometre straight in a 13-kilometre
Yeah. It's
lap.
a big boy. It's a big boy.
It's a lot. And this would cause a lot of engine failures as well as tyre failures as cars would reach over 320 kilometres before having to brake for a very sharp right-hand turn at the end of the straight at the town of Mulsanne.
Everything's super cold by the end of that straight.
Yeah, you're just hooking it at full throttle and then you're just on anchors right at the end. The FIA, the International Automobile Federation, which I know that's not the way the letters are because it's in French. Or
Fédération Internationale Automobile.
That's the one. Decided in the late 1980s that it would no longer sanction a circuit with a straight longer than 2 kilometres, which just so happens to be the length of the Dottinger Hohe Straight and the Nürburgring Nordschleife.
Huh. Yeah, that's pretty smart.
Yeah.
The straight on Fuji must be pretty close.
You reckon?
Yeah, Fuji's got a big long honker on it. It
goes out to like a big point with a hairpin at the end and it comes back and does the little...
Yeah.
Yeah, okay. I think I had that one as like a slot car set. That was So how'd I go with my pronunciation of those?
Not bad.
Yeah.
I mean, Mussolini straight you got wrong, but...
Yeah. But the Dottinger Hon?
Oh, look, I don't know that one. But yeah, you know what? It's German. I don't know German that well.
Yeah, so the Nürburgring, again, another very famous racetrack.
Very dangerous one.
If you've ever played a racing game, I'm sure you've driven on that one as well.
The Green Hell. That's what. That's where former story topic
Nicky
Lauda had his accident that burnt him all up.
The max speed reached pre-1990 was from a car dubbed the WMP88, and it was powered by a 2.8-litre supercharged Peugeot PRV V6 engine. Which doesn't seem like it would have the max power, like the record for fastest is only a V6 turbo.
How big was it? 2.8
turbocharged V6.
Yeah, I bet it was absolutely pinging though. Would have been doing like 18,000 RPM or something.
They designed it so it sacrificed reliability for power.
It's not really what you want to do in a 24-hour race.
As a result of this, the car was retired after 53 laps.
Cool.
Or 4 hours into the race with turbo, cooling and electrical failures. However,
got the record though.
It was measured by radar at 405 kilometres an hour or 252 miles an hour. An all-time race record speed.
That is bat insane.
So I'm assuming they designed this car just for that purpose. They're like, it's going to burn out.
We're not going to win this race.
But we're going to get
that record.
We're going to get the speed. Let's have a quick look. I'm just quickly looking up the land speed record.
For a piston-powered car, it'll be like 500 k's an hour or something.
Okay, I've just got the land speed record.
Oh, okay.
Which is 1,227.986 kilometres an hour.
Yeah.
It's fast.
Yeah.
It's faster than...
That'd be a rocket-powered car though, right?
Yeah, that's Mach 0.1. So let's have a look at the land speed record for piston power. 470 kilometres an hour.
There's still a fair way to go.
It's 65 kilometres.
Yeah, but at that speed, 65 k's an hour is
sorry. No, it's 470 miles per hour.
Oh. Okay, that's very high.
That's very fast.
That's what, 1.6 times. That'd be 400, what'd you say? 470 mile an hour?
Mm-hmm.
So it'd probably be like
60 miles to 100. So
it'd probably be like 700-ish k's?
7. Yeah.
Yeah. Wild.
Crazy. Anyway, still very fast. After the addition of the chicanes, Most cars top out around 330 kilometres an hour. The record post-1990, though, is from one Nissan R90CK, or it kind of looks like R-Rock, which reached 366 kilometres an hour during qualifying. When the twin turbos wastegate, is that the part that sneezes?
Yeah.
Yeah. The wastegate got stuck shut, causing the engine to produce well over its regular output of 800 brake horsepower. The exact power it was producing at that time is unknown.
I have heard that story. They were like, hey, this thing's broken. The guy's like, I'm going to go out there. I want to see what this does.
And yet just
all the engineers are like, please don't do this.
It just
please don't.
Blitz the post-1990.
Yeah.
So,
and that's on a straight that's like a third the length.
Yeah, so they got the two chicanes added to 6 kilometres. So there's 3 sections of 2 kilometres?
Yeah.
So you're getting up to 360 kilometres an hour in 2 Ks. Just don't have to brake for a chicane. Crazy. With this high speed part of the track, there is also high risk. And there have been many incidents that have occurred on the straight, especially in the 1980s. Right before the chicanes were introduced and right at the point cars were getting super powerful. Our topic of this podcast is not one of them, but let's have a look at a few anyway.
There's one that you probably have seen, and it's by a famous Aussie.
Oh, really?
Well, the footage is not of the Aussie, but doing it. It's of his teammate, but...
Okay, well, you let me know if I didn't actually read any, but Jean-Louis Lafosse.
Great name, yep.
Lafosse. He was killed in 1981 when his car suffered a mechanical failure and suddenly veered right, striking a guardrail before crossing back across the track and striking the opposite guardrail. Lafosse's body was partially ejected and can be seen in footage being dragged across the track with only his legs and lower body remaining in the car's cockpit.
I don't want to see that footage.
It's not that gruesome. I actually did look it up.
See it.
Joe Gardner. He was killed in 1986 when his Porsche suffered mechanical failure at 2 a.m. and it turned hard left into barriers, somersaulting down the track, hitting a telephone pole, crashing into trees, and coming to a stop on the top of the barriers on the other side of the track and catching on fire. So these accidents...
What a way to go.
These accidents are occurring at like the 300 kilometre an hour and something like a tyre fails or like snaps and the car just goes...
See ya. You've had enough of life. Goodbye.
The accident took out 100 metres of guardrail and debris was strewn over 200 metres.
What year was this?
86.
Okay, so they probably would have had a safety car by that point.
Also in 1986, a driver had a lucky escape when a tyre on his 7-litre V12 Jaguar exploded at 386 kilometres an hour, tearing off the rear bodywork and flipping the car up into the air above the height of the trees. Yeah.
Yep.
The wreckage came to a halt 600 metres down the track, and even though the vehicle was almost obliterated, the driver walked away from the crash with nothing more than a badly battered helmet.
Oh, that's lucky. That's a long way to go up.
So my wife's father used to race sprint cars, and he had an accident one night where his sprint car left Archerfield.
Oh, like went over the fence.
Oh, so
I have seen that before.
Just cartwheel and went. Yeah. Just took off.
Ugh.
Like a football. You know, your football goes bounce by bounce and then you have like that one random.
Yeah. Bounce by bounce. I was at Queensland Raceway one time. They had the mini racing championship.
That was actually brought up a couple of hours ago at cricket.
Yeah.
Someone brought that up where the mini flipped. I'm like, you can't flip a mini.
Oh boy, did they.
No, the mini
it was
flipped.
Scary.
Yeah.
I was on the other side of the track, and the thing with Queensland Raceway, you can see the whole circuit. So across the track, this mini like spun
into the sand or something.
Into the sand and went nose over tail into the crowd, like into the crowd, over the fence, into
it was
the
an older mini too, wasn't it?
It would have been about the age of yours.
Oh, so it was a newer one. Yeah, right.
And that was scary. I've never heard such a silent crowd.
We've got some link dumps coming.
Boy, do we. I've seen a lot of hectic crashes over my time.
So a few records for the track. We'll go, like I mentioned, the high-speed record.
Well, before you get past it, the one that I was referencing that happened at Le Mans, it was in the...
Le Mans.
I want to say it was in the late 90s. It was the Sauber Mercedes. Sauber Mercedes? Yeah, I think... No, it might have been Mercedes. It was just Mercedes. They had a car that in practice or in qualifying, one of the two, it just took off. Like it,
I
the front
I
end
have
lifted
seen that
up
one. Yes.
and it just went up and flipped,
Yeah.
crash.
It's just going like this high speed boat. You see him go.
Yeah. The footage you're talking about, though, not the first time it happened. It happened earlier in the event, like in practice or qualifying. And it was Mark Webber, the Formula One driver, the Australian Formula One driver. It happened to him. And they said, yeah, whatever, mate. There's no way that could happen. You've made it up. You've obviously just you've binned it.
Oh, so it said lifted on him, but he like recovered it? Or?
No, he went off into the trees.
Oh, okay.
And like he just ended up on the side of the track. He didn't go into the trees. He just ended up on the track. And they were like, whatever, mate, you just binned it. There's no way that could happen. And then it happened in the race and like got caught by the cameras, what you've seen, where it goes up into the trees. That driver survived. But then I think it was like 20 minutes after that happened, they saw the footage and they're like, ooh, retired all their cars.
Yeah, right.
Yeah. And I don't think they raced at Le Mans since. I don't think Mercedes had an entry in the top category.
Foreboding. So for a few records for the track, the current distance record was from 2010 by an Audi R15 TDI Plus with a distance of 5,410 kilometres or 0.71 kilometres.
Audi dominated that race.
For a long time.
Dominated it.
And the fastest lap record was from 2018 with 3 minutes and 17.297 seconds. It was done in a Toyota TS050 hybrid driven by Mike Conway. Toyota also dominated that race for when they went to the hybrids. It was a...
Yeah, there was a couple of years where they were really the only entrant. Toyota had a horror run trying to win that race. I think there was like 2 or 3 years in a row where they were leading and crashed out or had a mechanical failure. There was one very famous year where they crossed the line on the last lap and broke down on the start straight. So it was like, I think it was ticking over the 24 hours. They were onto the lap that would be the last lap and the car broke down and they got passed and didn't even finish the race. Yeah.
I mean, they finished, but not at the distance.
I don't think they got classified because they didn't cross the finish line.
Oh, that sucks.
Yeah, because I think at Le Mans, it's not like other races. You have to actually cross the finish line to be classified.
Okay.
So because they broke down, they didn't make it round on the final lap and get classified. Yeah.
That sucks. Originally, there were no restrictions on cars and everyone raced each other for the prize. In the modern day, cars are split into categories. They all race at the same time, but each category is competing for the title in their own category. There are lots of categories. There's lots of times I've said category as well. As of the race this year, there were 62 cars spread across 3 different categories. Hypercar, which had 23 cars, LMP2, who had 16, and LMGT3, which consisted of 23 vehicles. The cars we were talking about before with the fastest lap and the distance, they would have been part of the hypercar because...
Would have had a different name at that point.
Yeah. A lot of those hypercars are those hybrid, and they went to hybrid.
Hypercar now is a weird category because you can either use like a stock chassis and put your own engine in it, or you can build your own engine. You can build your own full car. So like Toyota have their own full car, whereas Cadillac, BMW, Porsche are all using the stock chassis.
I was hoping you'd go into this because I looked at it and went, this is too confusing. Aaron's going to know it anyway, so you can explain the different categories.
So over the years, they've done a whole bunch of different types of category. So
and again, that's why I only mentioned this year's, which was like last month.
Yeah. Like if you've seen Ford versus Ferrari, that was the top category at the time, and they were road production cars. Like you had to have a road production car.
Which I think is the LMGT3 is now like a road production car with restrictions placed on it, but
they are specially built cars, but they are a road going car.
But they're based on a
So that's GT3, and then LMP2 is like certain chassis they have to meet category restrictions. It's Le Mans prototype, and it's LMP2 because there used to be LMP1, which was you just build your own chassis to whatever category, whatever restrictions there were, and then LMP1 got ditched for hypercar.
And there's a bunch of stuff like there was a stock car had its own category at one point where they were racing like NASCAR, like type of cars.
So they call it Garage 63 or 53
56.
or something. Yeah. They do like weirdo cars for that. It's like experimental. They had a hydrogen car one year.
Oh, no, there was like a NASCAR category.
Yeah, that was last year.
And then there was also prototype cars, which is Garage 56, where they just They're almost concept cars that they race.
That was that Garage 56 was that weird Nissan with like the wider rear wheels and the pointy front.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah, they're almost like concept cars, like just out there designs. Yeah. Some traditions and unique rules are also a part of this race. For instance, during refueling, cars are to be turned off, which is different than most other races, I believe. Not only is this for safety, to stop a fire from happening, it is also much harder to make a car that will start many times under racing conditions. It is also, at this race, it was the first televised instance of a driver celebrating a win by spraying a champagne bottle instead of drinking it.
Oh, right. Okay.
It was in 1967 when Dan Gurney with co-driver AJ Foyt mounted the victory podium and looking down saw Ford CEO Henry Ford II, as well as team owner Carroll Shelby, both with their wives and a bunch of journalists. The journalists had predicted disaster for the racing team, so Gurney shook the bottle and sprayed everyone nearby.
Is that the Ford versus Ferrari?
Ford and Shelby, a famous duo, also had a historic race the year before in 1966.
Right.
You can find that story in the movie Ford versus Ferrari.
And maybe a future episode.
The 1955 race. The one this episode is about. If it wasn't for the most horrific moment in car racing history happening, this race may have been remembered for having a stellar lineup of drivers, which consisted of Formula One champions, which included Sterling Moss, Mike Hawthorne, and five-time champion Juan Manuel Fangio. So, yeah, this race had a lot of high-profile drivers.
Le Mans has always been one to attract future stars. Like you'll often see
the future stars co-driving because I haven't really gone into it, but obviously you can't race for 24 hours by yourself. And I believe it's a three-driver team that does it now. Back in the 60s, we're talking about there might have only been two drivers.
There was one dude that did 23 hours on his own.
Yeah, right.
Yeah. I think he crashed.
That sucks.
Yeah.
To drive 23 hours and then crash in the last hour. Yeah.
There's one guy that did it drunk too.
What?
Yeah. There's one guy that got blasted and then drove. Not good. Don't do that.
I actually seen a short just like yesterday or something. It's like British humour at its finest. And it's a cop that's pulled up to this older gentleman. He's got like a nice hat and suit on. And he's like, "Sir, have you been drinking?" And he's like, "Oh, I've been drinking all day, yes." And like he's sitting next to the car.
Yeah.
And he's like, "Oh, how much, when did you start drinking?" He's like, "Whenever I wanted to this morning." He's like, "Oh, I'll blow in this bag then." And the guy blows in the bag. This is like old school, like an actual bag, not like a breathalyzer. And he gets the reading. He's like, "Oh, sir, I'm going to have to ask you to come to the police station, escort me to the police station. You're well over the limit here."
Yeah.
And he goes, the cop goes to the partner, "Oh, you jump in your car. I'm going to take this gentleman's car with him to the police station." And the guy goes, "What about my chauffeur?" The chauffeur comes out of the bush like he's having a wee in the bush. And then the cop car's taken off. The chauffeur gets in. Old mate jumps in. And he's like, "Oh, so you're not driving this car?" He's like, "In my condition, please." And then the cop goes, "Well, can you take me to the police station?" The guy goes, "F off." And they drive off. Just like classic British humour.
Yeah.
So funny. I have not done it justice anyway. In the prelude to this race, 3 constructors or brands were favoured to take the title this year. Ferrari, the reigning champions. They had several 121 LMs entered. Jaguar, they had unloaded.
They had unloaded, had they?
All right. Jeremy Clarkson, the way you said that then. They had unloaded a lot of money into developing a Challenger, the Jaguar D-Type.
Yep.
And Mercedes. They had 300 SLRs. The Mercs had become known as Silver Bullets.
Silver Bullets or Silver Arrows?
Silver Arrows. Silver Arrows. I don't know why I wrote bullets. They had previously
Monster hunting.
They had previously stripped the paint off their cars to lose 1 kilo of weight back in 1934. The Mercs and the Jags were running an ultra-light magnesium alloy frame, while the Ferrari was different with an aluminium body over a steel frame.
It's so much easier to say aluminum, isn't it?
Not really.
Aluminium.
Aluminium. So yeah, two different types of bodies. Like the
Big slender boy.
Yeah.
Yep.
But I found that interesting too, that they took the paint off just to save 1 kilo. Like,
they did that with the space shuttle as well.
oh, did they?
Yeah, the big orange tank.
Oh yeah.
The first ones were white, and then they went, we don't actually have to paint this thing. So they saved 600 pounds of weight by not painting it.
That makes sense. That's 600 pounds. This is a kilo. I mean,
a kilo's a lot.
Yeah, okay.
You got to carry it around for 24 hours. That's a lot of weight.
I think I could handle an extra kilo for 24 hours.
Yeah, you'd be a lot more tired at the end.
The race, beginning at 4 p.m. on the 11th of June, the weather was warm and the skies were clear, and this brought out the spectators. Reports were that there were between 250 and 300,000 spectators.
I love old-timey spectator numbers because they're always so big.
It's a lot of people.
There's nothing else to do.
It's a 13-kilometre track. I'm sure there's plenty of room for them to...
A 24-hour race, soaking up like 2 days of your time. Whoa, that's like heaven to somebody in the 50s. Like, what else are you going to do? Play that thing with a stick and a tyre?
Oh, stick tyre.
Yeah.
The first hour of the race was thrilling. Even though this was an endurance race, the two leaders, Fangio in the Merc and Hawthorn in a Jag, were dueling it out like it was a sprint race. Hawthorn was holding quite the grudge. Mercedes had produced trucks and aircraft for Nazi Germany during World War II, and Hawthorn had lost a close family member. So he resented Mercedes and kind of made the race a bit personal.
That must have been weird, right? Like, to all of a sudden just be with the Germans like, let's do this fun motor race. That would have been weird, right?
It's only 10 years after the end of the war too.
Yeah.
So in a lot of people's recent memory. At 6:26 p.m. at the end of lap 35, disaster struck. On the lap prior, Hawthorn had been signalled to pit the next lap. Hawthorn, coming to the end of the lap, had just overtaken Lance Macklin in his Austin Healey 100S, who did see him and moved over to the right to let him pass. Macklin was getting lapped and was no longer on the lead lap, so that's why he kind of like moved over. Yeah, you're on the lead lap. You may pass.
You shall pass.
All right, Gandalf. Hawthorn then raised his hand to signal that he was pitting and pulled across to the right. At this time, there were no designated pit lane with no deceleration lane. So cars would just drop anchor and stop on the side of the...
It's pretty crazy, hey?
They just stop on the side of the track.
Yeah.
There were like pitting zones, but it was like there was no barrier. It was just like when you pull over on the side of the road and there's the little squares marked out, that's what the pitting zone was.
So like that's insane, right? Later on, they were like, that's much too unsafe. We'll have a pit lane. Yeah. So they put a wall there and you had to go into the pit lane. But then the pit lane had no speed limit. So you have like there's footage of like even Ayrton Senna in like the 80s and 90s pulling into pit lane and he's just doing like 200 k's an hour up to his pit bay and
then just dropping
gunning it out.
Just dropping anchor and then gunning it out. Far out.
Much safer.
And yeah, there was no deceleration lane either, like you know of a pit lane now. It's just
gun, stop.
Crazy. Macklin was surprised that Hawthorn's Jag was able to brake so quickly as it was using advanced disc brakes. At this point, Hawthorn is slowing down to stop at the pit. Macklin is right behind with another driver, Lev.
Probably Leve or something.
Lev. Who was also being lapped, and right behind him was Fangio. He was still dueling with Hawthorn for first, and Leve was trying to keep on that lead lap time. Whatever, who knows? Macklin, being surprised at Hawthorn's deceleration, braked and swerved to the left to avoid the Jag. This put him right in front of Leve, who was travelling at about 200k an hour. He was intent on not being lapped by Fangio, I just said. There was no time to evade, and possibly with his last action, Leve raised his hand to warn Fangio. Impact. LeVay's Mercedes hit Macklin's Austin Healey. Eyes shut, Fangio squeezed through the unfolding carnage and brushed Hawthorne's now stationary Jag in the pit. So he kind of just went like, oh,
Yeah.
whatever he did, and got through pretty much unscathed. LeVay's front wheel rode up onto the left rear corner of Macklin's car, launching it into the air. So these two racers who were being lapped have the guy in front's kind of like swerved because the guy in front of him was braking, and this guy's just hit him and taken off.
Taken off to the left.
Yep. Macklin's car launched into the air, flying over spectators and
Macklin's or Levy, whatever. Pierre.
Oh, sorry, Pierre's car.
Yeah.
It launched into the air, flying over spectators and cartwheeling for about 80 metres. Lever was instantly killed. He was thrown out of his spinning car and crushed his skull when he hit the ground.
Ooh.
The car slammed into an earthen embankment, which was between the spectators and the track. It bounced, then hit a concrete stairwell, catching on, like it caught on fire and disintegrated at that point. However, the heaviest components of the car, the engine block, radiator, and the front suspension, continued. Their momentum hurtled them straight through the crowd for another 100 metres, crushing all in their path. Probably the most gruesome part was the car's bonnet. It sliced through the air, decapitating a group of tightly packed spectators like a guillotine.
Oh, and this is in France too. Oh.
Another... Sorry, that realisation actually made me really laugh. Sorry.
Sacre bleu.
This is probably before the last guillotine execution.
It was. That was in the 70s.
Another driver watching from the pit wall described the following. The scene on the other side of the road was indescribable. The dead and dying were everywhere. The cries of pain, anguish, and despair screamed catastrophe. I stood as if in a dream, too horrified to even think. The rear of the car caught fire when the fuel tank exploded. The fuel fire caused the magnesium alloy body to burst into white-hot flames. So if you know what magnesium does when you light it up, like flares are made from magnesium because it's super bright, burns extremely hot. I've seen it before too at a beach. Someone let off a magnesium flare, and we found it the next day where it had landed. It actually like formed a glass crater in the sand. That's how hot it is. It's turning sand into glass. So yeah, it burst into white-hot flames, showering the track and the crowd with magnesium embers. You've got experience with embers getting blown all over you, haven't you, boy?
Not me, but I did see that last week. I was at a bonfire and it was a bit wet, so the bonfire was a bit embery. So it's spitting out like hundreds and hundreds of embers. And every time the wind changed, it would just blow it straight to the crowd. Everyone's running around like, bah!
Imagine if that was magnesium embers, like white-hot metal.
Ugh.
This situation was made worse when rescuers tried to extinguish the inferno with water, which just made the fire more intense. So if you add water to a magnesium fire, it just gets hotter. Meanwhile, Macklin's car, the one that was hit, heavily damaged. It hit the left-hand side barrier, veered over to the right near the pit lane, narrowly missing 3 other cars that were already pitted and refueling. Then it hit an unprotected pit wall, striking a policeman, a photographer, and 2 officials. All were seriously injured, and the car, they survived, but they were just seriously injured.
Yeah.
And the car continued down along the left-hand fence, which it hit earlier and came to a rest. Macklin survived without serious injury, able to jump out of the wreck and get himself clear. So this is all happening within seconds.
Yeah, it'd be 2 seconds, 3 seconds long. Yeah. Oh.
But yeah, the car's launched up over the outside of the track limits. He probably hit a bunch of people while it was cartwheeling. The front end of the car is shot out like it's continued. Crushed a bunch of people, and the bonnet, it's just sliced through the air. Like I'm assuming it's come off while it's spinning and
just imagine that scene for a second. Like you've got a fire, a hectic fire.
Oh yeah, and then there's the fire.
You've got
magnesium fire.
Decapitated bodies all over the place. You've got flattened people who've been hit by an engine block, which probably weighs like 300 kilos, right? Oh.
Carnage.
And then the smell, because it's going to be like a fuel fire.
Burning oil,
rubber, fuel,
blood,
bodies. Ugh. Not good.
as well as Levy.
Hmm.
83 spectators were killed and 178 were injured.
Those are huge numbers.
Yep.
Like one car goes into a crowd.
Yep. Yeah, this is one car too. Like it's not like 2 or 3 cars have gone off into a crowd. One car. Shockingly, the race continued.
There's logic behind that.
Race officials decided to keep the race going, citing that if they had stopped the race and the mass of spectators, they would have left at that moment. And they would have clogged up the roads leading to the track, and then emergency services wouldn't be able to get through to help the wounded.
I've been at an event where this happened. So I was at a drag racing event where a car got down towards like the third timing sector. So like the last quarter of the track.
Yeah.
So at pretty much max speed, did something where it like stepped left and then just took off right, like went up into the air over the fence.
Is that the one that hit like the marshal that was in the scaffolding?
Yeah. It was a cameraman. So there was a scaffolding tower with a cameraman. Hit that.
That was the fatality too. Was it the driver?
The driver passed away, yeah. So we're all standing there for like probably an hour and a half while they're working on the car, and like everyone could see it, so they know what's going on. And you could just see behind us, because we're up on a hill watching, you could see behind the road all these ambulances coming in. And they waited until all those ambulances had come in and left before they said, all right, the event's cancelled. Mm-hmm. Because that road just gets clogged and you can't get out. Mm-hmm. When you try and leave that event normally, it's like an hour to get out.
Yep.
So imagine doing that to the emergency services trying to get out. Yeah. It makes sense to keep the event going.
Yeah. Again, there was descriptions of people with wounded and dead bodies like being dragged in like banners and stuff that were there for the race. They were using them as like
makeshift
stretchers.
Yeah.
Yep. John Fitch.
Did they eventually cancel the race?
We'll get there.
Okay.
John Fitch, who was the co-driver for Levy, urged Mercedes to retire from the race, saying that would be a PR nightmare for the German company to be nonchalant about such French bloodshed, only a decade after World War II. Yet the decision had to be made from the top of the company, and after the heads of Mercedes had been briefed, they made the decision to quietly retire the team at 1:45 a.m. Apparently, they just pulled him in quietly. There was a short announcement saying that they were pulling out of the race, and that was it.
Probably the best way to do it, not make a big scene.
They also did it like there was time for it to get to the heads of the company, but it was also at that point the crowds were diminished as well.
Yeah.
The remaining Mercedes cars that they retired were coming in first and third. It was also said that one of the Mercedes team members also approached Jaguar to suggest that they also retire. Alas, they declined. The race continued overnight and into the morning with the usual car retirements, breakdowns and crashes that happened at this race. And with 15 minutes remaining, Hawthorn got back into his Jag and coasted to victory, completing 306 laps, which was at that time a record. And he was also 5 laps ahead of second.
That's a long win.
So he was quite a fair way in front. So to answer your question, no, they didn't end up cancelling the entire race. They kept it going.
Right. That seems insensitive, but...
Yeah, well, I kind of just... apparently, Hawthorn also kind of like overshot that attempt at pitting. And then when he come back in, he was actually stated that he had tears on his face. The next 2 rounds of the World Sports Car Championship were cancelled. Which included the race at Nürburgring. And by the end of the season, multiple teams had disbanded and withdrew from racing completely. Those teams included Mercedes-Benz, MG and Bristol. Mercedes only returned to racing in 1987. So they spent 55 to 87, what's that, 32 years?
55 to 87, so 32, yeah.
Yeah, they were just completely out of racing altogether for 30-odd years. Multiple drivers also retired from racing after this event. John Fitch later worked on some safety measures called Fitch barrels. which are large barrels filled with sand and or water. So you've probably seen them in movies, like they like to use them in movies when cars crash into barriers. They hit the drums of water and makes a big splash. I think The Matrix has a very famous one. He was the co-driver for the gentleman who died, and he came up with that safety concept. 3 months later, Macklin retired from racing after being involved in a twin fatality accident at Dunrod Circuit during the RAC Tourist Trophy race. So, a couple of months later, which was the first race after this incident, he was again involved in another fatality accident and just went, no, I'm out.
That might seem like, oh, wow, can't believe it happened again. This happened pretty much every event somebody would die.
Yeah, there was lots of drivers carking it.
Until probably the 80s. It was only probably the late 70s, early 80s where motorsport became somewhat safe.
I think I go into this a little bit. 67, 68, I've got here. An official inquiry concluded and cleared all drivers of any fault, and instead pointing out that the track was severely unprepared to hold such a race at such speeds.
Yeah.
When the track was built in 1923, cars would max out at about 100 k's an hour, and had only undertaken minor adjustments since, even though cars would now go almost 3 times that speed. Of course, blame would be thrown around at the drivers in the following years from both outside sources and the drivers themselves, but again, nothing became of the accusations formally. There was obviously all this, oh no, it was because he did this or that.
Yeah.
This person wasn't qualified enough to drive a car at the speed, that kind of stuff. Hawthorne, however, tragically died in a car accident in January of 1959 on a wet day driving his Jaguar, just on a country road outside London. Ironically, he was overtaking a Mercedes at the time.
Ugh.
Sometimes history has a bit of a sense of humour like that, doesn't it?
It's not really funny. But
it is now. But
yeah.
Oh, it's ironic. He was in a Jag and he was overtaking a Mercedes. For a little while, a few countries had completely banned motorsport racing. It was just a complete stop on motorsport racing until safety standards for the sport were improved. Switzerland is still currently the only country to have a ban in place. There's still no motorsport racing in Switzerland.
Yeah.
Which I didn't know. I found that interesting.
Yeah, and it's because of this event.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Modifications to the track were as follows. The grandstand and pits were demolished, as well as the straightening and widening of the track at and approaching the pits. They realigned Dunlop Curve, which is that on the way up to the
first corner?
The first corner?
I think.
It's got the big Dunlop arc over it. And they increased the separation between the road and the spectators, which included a wide ditch. So they moved the spectator stands back a bit.
Guarantee there was a bunch of people that were like, wow, this is so PC. Yeah. If I want to risk my life watching a car, I'll do it.
Track safety technology and practices evolved slowly until Formula One driver Jackie Stewart organised a concert campaign to advocate for better safety measures 10 years later. Stewart's campaign gained momentum after the deaths of Lorenzo Bandini in 67 and Jim Clark in 68.
Jim Clark was a big one.
So, this guy's pretty much put it on himself to go, no, we want better safety features. And again, from this incident, but it was 10 years later.
You've got to remember for these guys, this is all their friends. They travel the world with these people.
Yeah, I see them all the time.
Yeah.
I think this was put in place before this incident, but there are no spectators on the Mulsanne Straight, is there?
No.
And there's still no spectators there?
Don't think so.
I don't think you can actually go on the side of the Mulsanne Straight. There's a restaurant at the corner at the end of the Mulsanne Straight, I believe.
Maybe.
You used to be, this is something I read, they used to be able to have a really good view of the car slowing down and taking the corner, but I think there's green barriers there now, so you can no longer
see
it from the restaurant. Had a lovely balcony out front that you could see,
How annoying for that restaurant.
Oh, but you could imagine before 1990, this car is screaming down this, you could see it 6 Ks coming down the road, 400 Ks an hour. And just,
yeah. While you've got a martini, interesting.
It would get to you before you could hear it, right?
No.
The sound wouldn't be beating it.
325 meters a second is the speed of sound. So No, I don't think so.
Coming straight onto you, maybe. Yeah.
Yeah.
It'd still just be a weird concept. You're just seeing this car just hoofing it.
Hang on. We were just questioning that. It's the speed of sound.
Yeah.
No, it's faster than the car.
Yeah, right.
So what are we doing?
I often have a plane that flies past me and it's
yeah.
dead silent until it's like actually past you.
Yeah.
So that's a brief history of Circuit de la Sarthe and the 1955 Le Mans disaster, which is what it's actually called, the Le Mans disaster.
They still talk about it every so often on like the coverage. You know, they'll be like, "Oh, this guy survived. Oh, back in 1955."
I did have a tab open with like the 20 worst racing incidents, but I got enough out of this one to not need it. I thought.
What's that noise?
Oh.
Weird.
I thought I might need to chuck in a few, but we got enough interesting stuff out of the track itself and its history, and then just awful.
Yeah. Awful's the only way to describe it.
Yeah. I think I also did read there were like co-drivers and drivers who started seeing like the news reports or hearing about the news reports going out, and they made frantic phone calls to friends and family to say, "Look, I'm not one of the drivers.
Yeah, I'm okay.
I'm okay."
Yeah.
I couldn't imagine. There are pictures. I'm sure Aaron will get some pictures for the socials. They're not gruesome. I think some might be created to like a reenactment. But we'll have at least like the Mercedes-Benz
what
car.
It looked like.
Yeah.
Not the incident.
There's not going to be
what the track looked like. Yeah.
No, there's not going to be decapitated bodies on the side or anything like that. No, just
don't think Facebook would like that.
Just a crazy series of events that, like you said, would have happened all in 10 seconds.
It unfolds very quickly when things go wrong.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Just crazy.
Motorsport's dangerous. That's why they put it on the back of the ticket.
And that's why you love it.
Yeah.
You wouldn't watch it if they only could do 60k an hour.
That's why nobody will ever watch
go-karts
racing.
Train racing's not too bad.
Well, autonomous car racing. They're never going to watch that.
Did I send that to you?
Yes, it was awful.
I'm glad you brought that up. I seen a video of autonomous car racing and it was not great.
No, they made this huge deal about it. It was like 6 cars, wasn't it?
Yeah.
They all just kept like crashing into stuff.
They just like would stop randomly in the middle of the track and just turn sideways for no reason.
Yeah, crazy. Anyway, like John said, hit us up on @CheekyTalesPod, Facebook, Twitter, and Instagram. There will be images there to kind of fill you in on what it may have looked like.
I think you've got a few to go in the link dump as well, some videos and...
Yeah, we'll have to find some to put in the dump.
Yep.
Nothing funny about that.
Nope.
We'll be back in a fortnight with another story. It'll be my turn. We'll probably look like we've just recorded it straight afterwards. We'll see you
don't
then.
have to say that.
Peel back the curtain. We're going to be in the same clothes. Anyway, it has been lovely speaking to you. Good night.
Good night, Chiquitos.